Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Wednesday Wisdom on the Educational AD Podcast. We'll be right back with today's Wednesday Wisdom guest, but first, we want to acknowledge our podcast partners. We Coach, a global community of women in high school sports, Florida Coaches Coalition, and Vital Signs Wall of Fame. You've heard me say before that these are four organizations you should add to your network. And now, don't hit that fast forward button. Stay with us for 3 minutes and listen to our podcast sponsors. These are all great companies that you should have working for you. Here we go. We want to thank Huddle for their support of the Educational AD Podcast. Go to huddle.com, change the way you see the game. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, I made sure our school was a Huddle school. And the tools that they provided our school, our coaches, and our student athletes allowed us to compete at the highest level. And they'll do the same for you too. Go to huddle.com, see why we believe in sports and teams believe in Huddle. Join the 6 million users and turn your school into a Huddle school. We also want to thank Sideline Interactive indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and schedule a live web demo and see their tables and their boards in action. Their products not only generate income for your department, but they also create the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Schedule that live web demo now. That's sidelineinteractive.com. We also want to say thanks to Gipper. Go to gipper.com. See how athletic directors are using their templates to create world-class marketing content for their school social media channels. Use our podcast code ADPOD10 and you'll get 10% off. That's gipper.com. Create custom content for your school's social media channel. We also want to thank Vital Signs Wall of Fame. Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Check out their great products. The Wall of Fame is actually an interactive touchscreen video console that highlights your school's top performers in athletics, academics, and the arts. But it's a lot more than that. It's also an extensive content program that allows you to tell more compelling stories to better engage your audience. Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com, and when you're ready to buy, use this link, vitalsignswalloffame.com/Jake, and you'll get a nice discount. Vital Signs Wall of Fame. Let them help you bring your school's legacy to life. We want to thank Hometown Ticketing. Hometown Ticketing is the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. Go to hometownticketing.com. They're going to show you how to set up and sell your tickets online, not just for athletic events, but school plays, school concerts, even graduation. Go to hometownticketing.com. You'll also have a dedicated client success manager that's providing you hands-on support every step of the way. That's every step of the way. Go to hometownticketing.com and check it out. Hometown Ticketing, simple and easy online ticketing. We also want to say thanks to Snap Mobile. Snap Mobile is the parent company for an entire suite of platforms designed to help you as an athletic director. There's Snap Connect, Snap Manage, Snap Store, and of course, there's Snap Raise, their fundraising platform. We used it in our school with tremendous success. Coaches and parents just loved it, and you can too. They even have a program where you can get your funding before you actually start your fundraiser. I don't think anybody else offers that. Go to snapraise.com and get started today. That's snapraise.com. And we want to thank Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're really missing out. ADs typically only hear back from the 2%, that squeaky wheel parent or maybe a frustrated athlete. And we need to hear back from them so we can affect positive change. But Athletic Surveys connects you to the 98% that really love and support your program. That allows you to take the pulse of your parents and your student athletes. So go to athleticsurveys.com right now. Let them show you what they can do for you and your school. That's athleticsurveys.com. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Wednesday Wisdom on the Educational AD Podcast. We've got a good friend and a Wednesday Wisdom veteran. She's back for another great episode. We're going to hear from Rebecca Karr. That should be a familiar name to regular listeners. She's a certified master athletic administrator. She's the director of athletics at Harlem High School, and that's in Mechesney Park, Illinois. very active at the state level. She's the state coordinator, for Illinois. Teaches LTI courses. I think she's helping run her state conference this year. But Rebecca, welcome back to Wednesday Wisdom.
Thanks. Always good to be here.
Well, you and I were talking before. It's springtime. We're recording this, near the end of April. So that favorite time of year for athletic directors. I know you're really busy. What do you have for our listeners today on Wednesday Wisdom?
So I was trying to figure this out, right? We as athletic directors, we have our fingers in all the holes, right? Like we put band-aids on everything. And is there really anything better or that we do better than other athletic directors or have wisdom to pass on? I don't know, but this is what I'm going to pass on to everybody. So my athletic trainer and I, when I started here 4 years ago, he told me, "Hey, we're a national safe school," and I was like, "What is that?" So he went through the process with me and talked me through with the National Athletic Training Association about being a safe school and what's all involved and what we sign off on, and how prepared we are in the event of an emergency. And so I just wanted to kind of talk about that. It's kind of a hot topic right now. Things that happened with, in the NFL with Damar Hamlin. And so just kind of talking about the importance of emergency action plans and having to use those emergency action plans. So every year I send out our emergency action plan to our coaches. I actually send it out several times a year at the beginning of each season just to make sure that, hey, everybody knows what to do in the event of an emergency. The key players at my school, myself, my athletic trainer, head coach, all the information kind of funnels through me. We do have an SRO, safety or student resource officer, at our school. And so do things need to funnel through him? So basically, I had one of my assistant coordinators come up with a book, which, because my background's a little bored, but I just wanted to kind of go over that, kind of how it came about and what we use it for. So our PA announcer for whether it's basketball, volleyball, football, gets this binder and it sits right in front of the microphone. My custodial staff that sets up knows, hey, grab the binder, put it in front of the microphone. So lots of kind of training to get people to understand the importance of having this information right at your fingertips. In my emergency action plan binder, we've got, guidelines for announcing what to do in case of a fire, a tornado. Do we need to evacuate? Things that are stadium specific, things that are gym specific. And so just kind of wanted to go over the importance of having that on hand. In this, I've got like a little tab and it says start here, so that in the case of an emergency, like my PA announcers know exactly where to go. Everything is bookmarked, tabbed with, red. Red is always a good color for emergency. So, hey, the red page, fire, the green page, rain, whatever it is. And so they know where to start. Not only is it written dog-eared, but it's also color-coded. And so just kind of wanted to make sure that everybody on my team knows what to do in the case of an emergency. My athletic trainer and we constantly talk. And I think that that's, if you're lucky enough to have an athletic trainer on staff, being that go-to person and being in constant communication with that person is just paramount. He comes into my office every day, whether we talk, things that happened yesterday. We had a student who got injured, give me an injury report, dropping off an incident report. Like he and I talk all the time, every day. And I just think that that's really, really important to have that person that you're communicating with to get that information, so that you're not left in the dark. And so he and I have set up, summer's coming, right? It's spring. we've got summer camps coming up in a couple of weeks, and so he and I have talked about when are we reviewing our emergency action plan. We set up an emergency action plan review with our uh, sheriffs and our fire department, and they come in and we practice with them. And I bring in my PA announcers, and my football PA announcers are sitting up in the press box while we're doing all of this so that everybody knows the scenario and everybody can go through and kind of, practice, because we don't want our practice to be if something happens in that case. So I think it's always important to get the players that are there that are involved, right? Like your PA announcer, your clock timer, like who are the people that you're going to rely on in the case of an emergency? Because an athletic director can't do everything. So like our emergency action plan has administrator one. Well, who's administrator one, and do they know who administrator one is? Um, do you want your principal to be administrator one? Do you want your assistant principal to be administrator one? Like, if you're putting this in your emergency action plan as, administrator one, two, three, who are those people? Do they know who they are? Do they know what their job is? And so it's just really important, again, to practice with those people that they know what their role is. And so we actually had to put our emergency action plan into place at one of our football games. We had an incident, seemed to be more than it was. But even though we had practiced, there was still a little bit of chaos. So when I called up to my press box announcer and I'm like, hey, I need you to make the announcement that we need people to exit through a different gate, everybody was flustered because they hadn't done that before. So the crowd's a little on edge, like, why are we leaving through another gate? My PA announcer is like, you want me to what? You want me to tell them what? Don't tell them anything. Just tell them to exit through the other gate. We practiced this. So even with all the practice, I just think it's really, really important that everybody knows what's going on and that you have things written down. Doesn't necessarily have to be all fancy in a binder, but that's what works for us.
Yeah, you cover, as you mentioned, it's kind of a hot topic, but also very timely. The having that action plan, that's a living, breathing thing, something that you do practice as opposed to a binder that sits up on the shelf and gathers dust, is crucial. Years ago, I actually conspired with my head soccer coach to pretend that he was having, like a shortness of breath and go down to one knee just to see how his assistants and his kids would respond, because we do, have our coaches practice it. And I was standing about 50 yards away. Kids couldn't see me, coaches couldn't see me. And, one of the assistant coaches immediately went down. I heard him say, call Coach Von Shear, and handed him the cell phone. And my phone's ringing like 8 seconds later. So it was really cool to see that, his coaching staff and his kids were ready to go. Rebecca, there's so many different iterations of schools and athletic director setups. You've got a trainer. I was very blessed to have an athletic trainer. Sometimes there's assistant ADs, and you mentioned resource officers. For that Lone Ranger AD, small school, big school, what's your advice if they don't have an action plan, or maybe they need to revamp it? For that person it's just them, what's your advice as far as maybe the first 2 or 3 steps to take?
Sure. I honestly, I have this situation at my school. I'm a district athletic administrator, so I have middle school along with high school, and our middle school doesn't have a designated trainer. So it's really important to get that information out to those coaches. So basically, what I tell them, and what our emergency action plan is for our middle school, kind of that lone wolf situation, is make the call to 911, right, and your emergency services. if someone is not breathing or, has a shortness of breath, no pulse, our emergency situations, and then call our trainer and then call me. So if you're without a trainer, you're going to call your athletic administrator or you're going to call your principal. But that has to be noted as to who are you going to call? Who is that person that you're going to call or that your coaches are going to call? Who is that designee? Um, basically with an athletic administrator, if you're the athletic administrator, expect that you have your phone on you all the time because you never know when that phone call or if that phone call is going to happen. So if you're without a trainer, obviously you are that person. And it's a little bit more responsibility, but the bottom line is you need to make sure that your coaches know who to call. And I think that's the important part of a written emergency action plan. And it just has to be known, right? Like it has to be ingrained into the coaches' minds that this is what you do. I don't care how many times you practice it, you can't just say it once. I send my emergency action plan out 3 times a year, if not more. But I'm constantly talking with my middle school athletic coordinator who does our middle school stuff. And I'm like, you have to tell this to your coaches like all the time. Whether they're starting their season, in the middle of their season, they're done with their season, they need to know all of this information. And it's 3 steps, right? Assess the situation, call emergency services, call the athletic administrator or the designee. Then as the designee, you're the one who has all the moving parts to deal with. But just super, super important that the plan is what the plan is and that people follow it. Just like when you're doing your CPR training, somebody says, go call 911, but you have to designate someone to do that. You don't just shout it out into the crowd and hope somebody does it. So people need to know their roles and they need to know what the order of operations is.
Yeah, again, great reminder. You got to have a plan. Plan your work your plan. Then you got to practice it. Everybody's got to know their role. Rebecca, great stuff. If one of our listeners wanted to reach out, pick your brain a little bit more about your plan and how they might develop their own, what's the best way they can get a hold of you?
Sure. Best way to get a hold of me is through email, rebecca.karr, Karr, at harlem122.org. I will share whatever I have. This is what we do best as athletic administrators. We share, we steal, we revamp. So I will give you what I have. Just ask. Plenty of people have redone their emergency action plans. We're constantly redoing ours. I lost a soccer field to construction, so we've had to figure out where a helicopter would land. These are all the things that, despite having a book and a binder, like you still have to practice it and you have to make sure that it works. So what's in my book may not work for everybody, but I'd be happy to share.
Yeah. You got to make it work for your school, your facility, your staff. Great stuff. Rebecca, thanks as always for sharing with us on Wednesday Wisdom, and all the best with the rest of the spring season.
Thanks so much.
For listeners, we do this every single week, and we upload the Zoom videos to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We appreciate you listening. Come back next Wednesday for another Wednesday Wisdom tip, and just about every day for new content on the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time. Before we go, we do want to thank our sponsors one more time. These are all great organizations, great vendors, and the service or the item that they provide you, I've actually used. So the only thing I didn't use personally was Hometown Ticketing, which I retired just as Hometown was coming into vogue. But I've talked to hundreds of ADs across the country who swear by Hometown Ticketing, and you should too. So go to hometownticketing.com. Gipper. I use Gipper just about every day. It's a great way to promote what we do, great way to promote what your school does. Go to Gipper.com to get started. Mention the podcast. You'll get a nice discount. Huddle, I used as a football coach and as an AD. We were a Huddle school, and our coaches just loved all the tools that Huddle provided for us. Go to Huddle.com to get started. Athletic surveys by Lifetrack. If you're not using surveys, you're really missing out. At my school, we use surveys for just about everything. And athletic surveys will help you take the pulse of your parents, your student athletes, even your coaches. Go to athleticsurveys.com. Get started with surveys at your school. Want to thank Sideline Interactive. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made as an athletic director was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. Tremendously versatile, and it's also a money maker for your school. We want to thank Snap Mobile. Speaking of moneymaker, Snap Mobile is the parent company for an entire suite of platforms, including Snap Raise. We use Snap Raise at our school. Parents loved it, coaches loved it, so easy to use, and it works. They even have a program where they'll give you your funding before you actually start your fundraiser. I haven't heard of anybody else doing that. If there is, let me know. But until I do, SnapRaise is the only one that does that. So check out snapraise.com. And finally, Vital Signs Wall of Fame. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school's record boards for all your sports, for all the events, or your school's Hall of Fame, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Tell them you heard about it on the podcast. You'll get a nice discount too. Thanks again for listening to this Wednesday Wisdom segment. We'll see you next time on the Educational AD Podcast.